After quitting World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy XIV has slowly become my favorite MMORPG. Some aspects of 14 blew me away immediately, while others were a bit challenging to get used to. When I was ready to try the game out, I purchased it on Steam. After that, it took a bit of time for me to figure out how to navigate through the MOG station. After some clicking around, I eventually figured out where to put my serial number for a Realm Reborn and how to sign up for a subscription. I'm more used to it now and don't have any issues, but Square Enix could definitely revamp and streamline the MOG station in the future for new players. After getting my account all set up, I opened the launcher from Steam. I thought that the launcher was decent, but the main challenge I had with it was having to type in my password every single time I opened it. I know that the Tool 14 or XIV launcher can solve that issue, but I obviously wouldn't indulge in using a third-party tool. After launching the game, I was ready to create my character. I grew up watching my older brother play Final Fantasy games, so the background music was nostalgic. Even though 14's character creation system is a bit dated and isn't really revolutionary, I was blown away by it just because I was used to having way less options in WoW. It was cool that I could adjust my character's height, muscle definition, voice, and more. I also think that 14's art style in general looks a lot better than WoW's. I know that people call 14 a weeb game, and I do love anime, so maybe that contributes to why I like this Eastern art style more. I did have trouble creating my character on the server of my choice since it was full, but I was able to save my character's appearance and then create it at a later time. My main character in WoW was a rogue, so I had my sights set on the ninja in 14. When I didn't see rogue on the list of classes available for new characters, I was really bummed. I did some searches and was relieved when I saw that you could actually unlock every single class and job on the same character. I never liked making alts in WoW because I like putting all of my effort into my one main character. With 14, I'm actually open to eventually trying out every job since it would all be effort put towards my main character. But back to the rogue, I was a bit relieved that I just had to get to level 10 to unlock it, so I decided I'd pick another melee DPS for the first 10 levels. I created a pugilist and was sent off to Ul'dah. While I probably should have chosen a job that started in Limsa Lominsa so that I would be physically closer to unlocking the rogue, I was glad that I ended up in Ul'dah. I first logged in at night, so I heard the Sultana Dreaming song. To this day, that is still my favorite song in the game. The melody is just really beautiful, and I find it to be really calming. I thought that the city was absolutely beautiful too. I spent a good amount of time just wandering through the city to explore it. But despite enjoying Ul'dah's appearance and music, I was a bit annoyed of the city being split into multiple zones. The map didn't feel very intuitive to me. I felt that there were too many icons all over the map and it sort of overwhelmed me. I've gotten used to it now, but it still feels a bit clunky compared to other MMOs like WoW and Guild Wars 2. Before going into 14, I heard that the game's biggest strength was its story, so I went in with very high expectations. At first, I found the story to be pretty average, but as time went on, a Realm Reborn story really grew on me. When I hit the post-patch content for A Realm Reborn, I started to find the plot to be a little too slow. I had heard that Heavensward was a fan-favorite expansion, so I decided to pay for the story skip for A Realm Reborn and then just watch the cutscenes in the end to catch myself up. After watching the cutscenes, I immediately regretted my purchase. The ending to A Realm Reborn was amazing. When I watched the final cutscenes leading into Heavensward, my mind was absolutely blown. So yeah, don't ever buy the story skip. Don't be like me. I will never touch those ever again. I can understand side quests not having any voice acting, but I really wish that the entire MSQ was fully voiced. If it was, I don't think I would have bought the story skip, and I would have gotten more immersed in the story a lot earlier on. When I first decided to try out 14, I actually talked 3 other people into playing with me. Since the MSQ is so single-player focused with very little voice acting, it wasn't really too fun to play through the story with friends. We did try to group up, stay on the same MSQ, leave the party when required to for solo duties, and then recreate the party when we were all done. But the experience was clunky because some of us would silently read the dialogue faster than others. So there would be a lot of short, awkward bits of silence between quests when we were waiting for someone to finish reading. No one was rushing anyone, but the slower readers felt pressure to just skip through the text to keep up with everyone else. We eventually stopped playing together for the most part, besides for when we unlocked new dungeons and trials. Since the game is designed to work this way, I started to have a lot more fun when I could play the game at my own pace. It's nice to see that changes are being made to make the game more accessible to people that want to play the MSQ alone, but I'd like to see some improvements for people that want to go through the story with friends. On my ninja, until about level 50, I felt like the combat was too simple, but after level 60, the combat does feel great. Unfortunately, whenever I queue into a lower level duty, I feel the pain again when I lose all of my interesting abilities. I wish that there could be an option to keep all of your high level skills in lower level content. Even if it made you do less damage, I would still prefer to have my full rotation. When I heard that all of the DPS jobs were pretty well balanced, I was in literal disbelief. People telling me that I could just play whatever I wanted to sounded too good to be true. At first, I thought that 14 was being too restrictive by not letting you have different specs or distribute your stats how you wanted since this is an RPG. Other games like WoW give you more freedom by letting you distribute talents and obtain different types of gear with different stat combinations. Looking back, I actually never felt like that was a good thing though. The freedom was sort of an illusion because most people like me would just find the most optimal builds and the best in slot gear and go with that. So while 14's design may seem restrictive to many by offering no builds and only one gear set, I think that it's great. I would take balance over freedom for theory crafting any day. Like I said earlier, I love 14's art style. Unfortunately, I think that their glamour system just isn't as good as WoW's collection and transmog system. Since I'm not a hardcore glamour person, this wasn't really a huge disappointment for me. I really only cycle through like 3 different glamour sets. I noticed that weapons are tied to a job's identity in 14. One of the game's biggest strengths is being able to switch jobs with a swap of a weapon. I really wanted to dual wield swords on my ninja, but that isn't possible. Thankfully, there are some pretty long daggers that look sword-like that fit my needs. But it would be pretty cool if I could use the appearance of some one-handed axes or maces too. And also, it would be pretty cool if I could use different appearances for my main hand versus my offhand daggers. I think that it's great that 14 allows you to show, hide, resize, and move around almost every portion of your UI without using any mods. The downside is that the UI looks a bit aged to me. You can make a pretty modern looking UI with Delve UI and Material UI, but I obviously would never touch a third-party tool. I did hear that Square Enix is working on adding functionality from popular add-ons into the game, so I hope that Delve UI and Material UI are added in someday. I actually first tried out 14 in 2017 when I was taking a small break from the Legion expansion. The biggest challenge of all was stopping myself from comparing 14 to WoW. With every little movement I made in the game, I would subconsciously think about how uncomfortable it felt to be playing a different game. After not giving the game a fair chance for about 20 levels, I quit 14. When I was fed up with WoW again in 2021, I came back to 14 again with a more open mind. Instead of trying to see if I can get a WoW-like experience from the game, I'm just enjoying 14 for what it is. The final thing that was unbelievable was the community. People always say this, but it's true. The 14 community is amazing. The only way to get a similar experience in WoW is to join a really great guild. Those are hard to find. In WoW, I basically refused to play with anyone that I wasn't already friends with because I had no idea if they would yell at me or tell me to kill myself or something. By 2021, I only had one other friend still playing WoW with me, so my gameplay options were really limited. With 14, I haven't had any problems with the duty finder. I'm always sure to mention it in the chat if it's my first time doing a dungeon or trial. Most of the time, before entering a hard fight, someone will explain the basics of it to me. I tend to die a lot when it's my first time doing a trial, but I have never once been criticized for it. The healers have been so nice every time and raised me over and over again in the same fight. So while I did have some constructive criticisms of the game, I still think that a Realm Reborn was great. Square Enix should definitely consider updating the early game since all new players have to go through it, but it's overall really good. I'm absolutely addicted to this game now and I can't wait to keep playing. Thank you so much for watching.